Bitcoin hit its all-time high at the same time the dollar was near its all-time high.
Right.
But now, just a few months later, the dollar is testing some lows right now. Bitcoin is
89,000.
Correct, but it was at 100, so it
Yeah.
didn't go up with the dollar. It's not an inverse relationship. It kind of does its own thing. Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. Are you curious about what's been going on in the world of crypto? I'm Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined with Robert Swarthout, founder, CEO, portfolio manager of Teton Crypto Capital. Once a month, we like to do an extra podcast for you guys, just focused on crypto and everything related around that. So welcome back, Robert. Glad to have you with us again.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So let's kind of dive in here. We have a long list of things that we want to cover. I will start by saying this Trump and tariffs and has created mayhem in the market because the market doesn't like uncertainty. And right now we don't know if a business can be profitable or not profitable, or
it changes day to day.
It changes day to day, or we're going to stop getting stuff from China, which is probably not a bad thing. Are we going to start getting it from the Philippines instead? Or where are we going? Right.
Yep.
And it's been very interesting to see Bitcoin's reaction to all this. I will say for the first week of all the drama, Bitcoin held up pretty well, which is very surprising. Because I look at a Bitcoin as a 10x the Nasdaq or something like that as far as volatility.
3 to 10. It just depends on the day.
Right.
But yeah, it's it can be quite the ride. But it was like you said, holding its own and surprising many. There, all of a sudden you started hearing the words decoupling happening. That is not happening, to be very clear.
Right. Right. But decoupled for a week.
Yes. but in crypto, that's a month. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, thinking about that, and in our portfolios, we've had this pullback from 100,000. I tell everybody it's a 10-year investment, so we don't really care what it's at because we're not going to look until we're 10 years down the road.
Yep.
Or 9.5 years at this point.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't say that. I don't think anything's changed. We had the world's kind of changed, but if anything, I feel like this probably promotes more non-standard transactions and alternatives to maybe even the US dollar in some cases.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly this section of crypto that would, in a previous life, they may have been buying gold in this environment.
Yeah.
But now it's the Bitcoin crowd. Is the digital gold. They think it's, the solution to all the problems. It's probably not, but it is maybe a solution to some of these problems potentially. And it's just been interesting to watch it. It's when you talk about risk on assets, it's almost the epitome of that. Like it's not going to get more extreme. Maybe you go further down the market cap of cryptos and they become even more extreme volatile. But it's the last 22 days, or I guess he announced them on the 2nd. So the last 20 days have been a crazy ride. It feels like it's been 3 months.
Correct. I know. Yeah.
But we are only 20 days in, and it's just, we were talking before we started recording, like, just generally, if some announcement with China happens in a positive way, like, oh my gosh, hold on. Like everything is going to go up.
Correct.
In theory. And I can only imagine what, I can't imagine Bitcoin does the opposite in that case, or crypto. I think it would probably follow the market, but it's, it could be like jet fuel, powered.
But if you look at Bitcoin price, you would think that when a dollar gets stronger, the Bitcoin would fall off. That's not what was happening. Bitcoin hit its all-time high at the same time the dollar was near its all-time high.
Right.
But now, just a few months later, the dollar is testing some lows right now. Bitcoin is
89,000.
Correct, but it was at 100, so it didn't go up with the dollar. It's not an inverse relationship. It kind of does its own thing.
It in some sense it has. I mean, it's somewhat following the Nasdaq, but kind of creeping along. The Nasdaq being closed on the weekends. Bitcoin keeps trading this last weekend. Bitcoin, when it was up like 4 or 5%, that was surprising people.
Yeah,
we've learned not to trust runs on the weekends because when the markets open, the equities markets open,
it all resets.
It could reset.
Yeah.
But it has held its own. And, like I said, it's at 89,000 now. I think earlier in the month, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the high 70s. So it had pulled back a good amount.
Right.
But now it's just kind of, chugging along. It's in a channel, and it's just kind of testing the top, testing the bottom, and it's kind of bouncing around. So, and it's really just a wait and see approach. There's no way to describe it other than it's waiting on the tariff situation to be figured out. So
I was, an article caught my eye, with, the Trump family, and it said they were the most canceled family on the face of the earth for the last 4 years for banking, and that they had moved most of their things to crypto related assets. And is that, it doesn't mean that they put all their family wealth into crypto.
Correct.
Their family wealth is still in real estate.
Absolutely.
But I think the transactions that they're using were stable coins, I assume.
I haven't seen tons of details around that, but what I can speak to is they got debanked in a big way, right? The Trump organization,
right? It's all political,
very
right.
political. But that was also happening in the crypto world. Is Operation Choke Point 2.0. I think you could probably put those two things together: the political side for the Trumps, and then just generally banks getting really having to get really stringent around having crypto customers because regulators were political in that sense, right?
Right.
So this is slowly getting cleaned up. You recently had heard that the OCC is allowing, and I think we talked about this last time, OCC is allowing banks to custody crypto. That's just one of the many different regulators, and they are all slowly kind of marching into lockstep here about crypto is not the end of the world, and banks in the financial system will be able to kind of interact with it, which is a big relief after 4 years of constant battle and trying to put out of business. So,
and I think I don't want to say the older generation, I don't want to pick on them because sometimes young people don't know about this stuff as much either, but when you walk into the bank and you see more crypto type language, that's going to make people feel more comfortable about crypto in general.
Yeah. And, it's still early days. We don't have regulations. We have stablecoin legislation is one of the things on our list here. It's progressing. It's been marked up where this House and the Senate both had bills that got voted on. That now they did the reconciliation between the two. So it's back there for them to vote on.
Right.
So it is by far the furthest a crypto bill's ever made it. Trump had said that he wanted this on his desk before the August recess. It's, I don't fully understand Congress's schedule, but it seems like it could be on that path to that being achievable. And that's just the first Lego block of what will be all crypto regulation, because stablecoins are admittedly the most simple of them all. So,
well, getting into our list here, there's even some talk. Well, I guess we'll stick on the Trump family for a second. There's another article in The Guardian that I found talking about that they were Trump is actually just going to deregulate crypto instead of regulate it, and there's be some competing.
Yeah, I mean,
competing news on this.
Again, anytime you read news, you got to figure out what their angle is, because there's the other angle somewhere else,
right?
Or multiple angles for that matter. So as part of Trump getting in office, whether the agencies or the new chairs were in place yet, for instance, like the SEC, the staff was already starting to do the work. In this case, the SEC was the one, at least from the crypto perspective, that was like the most overhanded with regulation by enforcement the last 3 or 4 years. They had started rolling that back, dropping cases, doing, in my opinion, correcting a lot of wrongs. And it appeared from the outside that crypto was not going to be regulated at all anymore. And that is not the case. The SEC is certainly moving forward with, I've seen a couple of the cases where there probably was some crimes committed, and they're moving forward with that, as they should.
It's their job.
Yes, it's their job. And admittedly, we want to be regulated correctly. We don't want to be not regulated at all, because we want to be taken seriously as an industry. So it was cool to kind of see that. But you'll see these articles, like The Guardian's one of them, that it's like, they generally are going to be left leaning. So they're not liking what this current administration is doing. So it's just unfortunate. But
so speaking of cases getting dropped, Ripple and SEC.
Yeah, we've probably spent a dozen episodes on, maybe more, on this thing. And it's
I like every time I read this thing, I'm like, the people who won were the attorneys.
Oh, 100%.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Taxpayers lost.
Yeah, that's true.
On one side, because they were funding the SEC.
Right.
And then the Ripple's attorneys definitely won out, because Ripple has said they've spent over $150 million on legal fees.
Wow.
At the end of the day, obviously they had to defend themselves, and was worth every single penny of that. which is just crazy to say, but that's the world we live in these days. So the Ripple and the SEC have jointly agreed to both drop their cross appeals, because that was the stage that this case was at. The court had originally said that Ripple had to pay a $125 million fine. Ripple had put that in escrow pending the appeals. And the SEC's agreed to request to have the court reduce that to $50 million. So Ripple's going to get back $75 million plus some interest there. And more importantly, and I think this didn't get picked up in the news as much, the SEC's agreed to request that the court remove the injunction that had been put in place in Ripple about selling securities, and had to do it in a lawful way, which no duh. I mean, it was kind of like a silly, follow the law or you're going to get in trouble.
Right.
Well, duh, I'm going to get in trouble anyways. But I think that one probably had more consequences for Ripple if they ever want to go public, because all of a sudden they're selling, they're putting securities out on the market with their stock. So, but this is pending Judge Torres ruling or being fine with it. And it sounds like the commission technically hasn't voted on this because my guess is the chair wasn't there yet. They were waiting on Paul Atkins, which is another thing on our list. As of today's Tuesday, the 22nd, as of literally yesterday afternoon, he got sworn in. So it could happen this Thursday. They seem to kind of vote on those things on Thursdays. I tend to notice. So we'll see. But we're getting close on.
So obviously he's going to be a pro crypto SEC chair.
Pro crypto, but if anything, like I just want someone balanced. Like I just don't want someone that is on a warpath against. I don't care who it is. I just generally like free markets, and this was not been a free market the last 4 years. So, but yeah, it's having him in place. He does seem to be pro crypto. He's said some very positive things about crypto, but again, Gensler had done the same thing at MIT. Like I keep going back to this. I was excited for Gensler because it wasn't Jay Clayton.
Right.
I didn't realize how wrong I was going to be in that moment. And maybe Gensler wanted to be positive, but he got marching orders from somebody else that he was going to do something different. And man, did he act very different on it. So, anyways, but yeah, that was big news for Ripple and the SEC. And, the market didn't react all that much to it because I think at this point it was assumed some form of this was going to happen. You've seen enough cases outright dropped by the SEC. This was by far the furthest along. So, it in some ways is going out with a whimper. But we're getting close to maybe giving I would imagine the next time we do a podcast, we'll be able to have our final update, final update on this one.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
Ripple at the same time is making an acquisition of Hidden Road for $1.25 billion. What does Hidden Road do?
Hidden Road is a prime broker. They interface with institutional capital or institutions, and they were basically the bridge between the crypto world and the traditional finance world. They settle $3 trillion a year in trades already, so pretty sizable. And you can see Ripple slowly starting to put together these pieces where Brad Garlinghouse and David Schwartz, the CTO of Ripple, years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, made the comment that they had the ambitions to be the Amazon of the crypto world. And you're starting to see some of these pieces, what could be their plan, come together. Okay, they're buying a prime broker. They last summer they spent, I think, $250 million on buying a custody firm out of Europe that focused on institutions. So they're all of a sudden, it would not surprise me at some point we had an update where it said Ripple bought a bank. They need a banking license, in my opinion. They have money transmitter licenses in 50 states now. They've got a lot of pieces that in weird ways provide a lot of value. They're just not extracting it yet. and kind of building this big suite to focus on institutions. So yeah, I think this is technically the second biggest crypto deal ever. It was a mix of stock, XRP and some Ripple shares, but in cash. So yeah, it was a big deal. And they even said that they plan to do post-trade settling on the XRP ledger through Hidden Road, and eventually all of it will happen there. So they're starting to weave these pieces together, or at least have a plan to do so. So it'll be cool to see how that rolls out.
So still staying on the Ripple topic, the lawsuit was all about it was XRP is XRP a security or not?
They had claimed that Ripple was selling unregistered securities, which was XRP.
So taking on to the next point, that's really big. The SEC say that stable coins are not securities.
Correct. Yeah. And it was just kind of like, this came and went in the news. It was like, you almost expect the SEC to say this now. It's
right.
4 months ago, this would not have happened. But yes, the SEC has come out and said stable coins are not securities. And yeah, no doubt, because they're backed by treasuries.
I had to say, and let's explain to our listeners. So a stable coin is backed by treasuries.
And the SEC specifically said stable coins that are not yield bearing. So if they become yield bearing, then it probably starts to come back in their jurisdiction, which makes some sense.
Right.
But they did say stable coins that are not yield bearing. So all that really means is the issuer gets to keep all that yield right now. That 5% that they're getting, that's a great business to be in.
Yeah, it is.
When you have, like Tether, granted it's not all treasuries, but like Ripple's stablecoin or even USDC. I mean, USDC is $60 billion and they're making 5% on that. Not a bad business.
No.
They have filed to go public. And their S1 is circulating a little bit. It's an okay business because they have, admittedly, a huge headcount. They got 800 employees.
Wow.
Versus Tether has 100. I'm like, is that the cost of compliance, or like what's the big disparity? Like, why do we have that gap? So maybe we'll get some answers on that long term. But it's So the SEC said that, and what's also not in our notes, the SEC recently said that meme coins are not securities. They are more akin to collectibles.
Wow.
So all these people launching meme coins that were a little bit hesitant about their legal situation,
right?
It probably had a big sigh of relief. That was about 3 weeks ago. So yeah,
that's these are all big things to me because we're defining boundaries now.
Yes.
Where before we were not defining boundaries at all.
Well, and we thought we might have a boundary, then all of a sudden the SEC would just come trample it and come after somebody, right?
Correct.
Like it was. The rules of the road weren't clear, and it just created a ton of uncertainty. Admittedly, like we have, magnitudes more uncertainty right now around tariffs, around the whole economy. But like, it's a lot of it was in some ways very much the same. So,
let's talk about Schwab.
Yes.
Charles Schwab, CEO, is expected to launch crypto spot trading in the next 12 months. What this means is you can trade cryptos directly at Charles Schwab.
Yes, without the ETF wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, regulations, we've beat that drum probably to death at this point on this podcast, but regulations need to be in place for this to happen. But Schwab has been working on a platform with a couple other traditional TradFi players. Instead of using like a Coinbase or something, I think they obviously want to own the whole. They want the fees there.
This is more my realm now, but what this does, it squashes all these small outfits that were trying to connect with financial advisors saying, hey, you can come trade your crypto platform here. And it pretty much eliminates those. Why? If you already have the rest of your business at Schwab, why would you have this third party? Unless they're going to start giving you access to things that Schwab is not willing to put on their platform, I guess.
Correct.
But it's kind of a game changer. It's kind of like you have a custom car and this is great. And you have a small following and then all of a sudden like Ford buys you.
Yes. And I would say that, all the fragmented different shops that were trying to come to an advisor like you and say, hey, you do your crypto trading with us. All that is fragmented liquidity. Like all of a sudden Schwab is going to their size is going to have good liquidity within their, the coins.
Oh, right. They should bring the trading volume with them.
Right. Absolutely.
Which makes things more efficient
for everybody.
Correct.
ETFs are great, but ETFs are not the solution to get crypto to the masses. And I think that over time, you just trading the exact crypto. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the ETFs for the ones that get put in place for some of these cryptos. You would assume that they stick around, but
I think you're going to see financial advisors buying the ETF over individual cryptos still.
Why?
Because it's a lot less. There's so much less liability with buying.
Yeah, I would assume that the liability in the sense of crypto, you're probably referring to more the custody, right?
Yeah, and then what it looks like to the client.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, custody will get figured out. Custody is not going to be an issue. If Schwab is willing to touch it. And it may be that they use, I know BNY is working on their crypto custody solution and being the huge custodian period. That may be the route to go. I have no idea, but it will be interesting to see. And again, do they launch with 2 tokens? Do they launch with 5 tokens?
That's another thing. It's you're going to have 3 to choose from.
Yeah.
In that case, some of the specialized, the Coinbase platforms would still be better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I also think that Coinbase at some point has got to be an acquisition target for one of these big, I don't know if it's like JP Morgan or a BlackRock or somebody.
Correct.
Schwab is probably not going to go out and buy them because they're working on their own. And that's relatively widely known at this point. But
I mean, what does it cost you to buy Bitcoin or something else at Coinbase?
The fee could be 1.5% sometimes.
So
if you do a lot of volume, you can be less than %.
You know what Schwab is really good at?
Low fees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to wring the fees out of this market as much as possible. At the end of the day, I think what will be the biggest change for these TradFi players is this is a 24/7 market, 7 days a week. So they're going to have to, in some ways, staff for that. I think at some level, and it's going to be a little bit different for them from a business model perspective.
It's so funny because Schwab is good at innovating it. I feel like things like this, but then on the back end, the service end of
they forget about that part.
Wealth management. It's kind of like Southwest. We're still communicating with the MS DOS with them, but client facing, they're pretty advanced.
You still have the fax,
right? Still the faxing. Yeah. No, we don't have to fax anymore. I guess. All right, 72 ETFs are pending. Speaking of, do we like ETFs versus trading directly?
Yeah.
72 ETFs are pending right now for approval to the SEC. 72.
And
are they all the same?
Roughly, I think 10, 11 of the 72 are XRP related.
Yeah.
Most of them are spot. Some of them are a 2X, long 2X short.
I want long 2X short. That's stupid. Don't do that, people. But the one I'm most excited about, there's got to be one of them in here, is
index.
Give me one that's index market cap weighted. I want a market cap weighted ETF that has all the cryptos in it. That's all I want. I want my it's kind of like my S&P 500.
Mm-hmm.
I want my market cap weighted crypto.
Yep. So I'm just quickly looking at this list. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but Hashdex has got a crypto index, and Franklin Templeton has got a crypto index.
Where's Bitwise? Bitwise should have a crypto index.
Bitwise, they have one listed here, and they do have a top 10 crypto index.
Top 10, yeah. Right.
Yeah, which makes total sense. Top 10 minus stable coins would be my guess is the way that they're going to go about that, because the 2 biggest stable coins are in the top 5.
True. So you're just buying cash at that point.
Right.
So what's the point?
And you're not getting the yield. So absolutely no point. But it's it'll be cool to see. Like, I think that
would be a great ETF to purchase that then put 2 to 4% of your portfolio in.
And obviously from an administrative standpoint for like a wealth management firm, like, easy. Oh my gosh, the overhead is so much lower.
Right. Exactly.
Assuming you like the market cap weighted or however they're doing their distribution there.
Right.
So, but there's stuff in here like some refiling for the Ethereum ETFs to allow staking. So that would actually be a yield generation on that asset, which would be great. Because if you hold Ethereum, you can stake it now and you get some yield. And more so, you're fighting the inflation of it, the Ethereum total supply a little bit, so that helps you keep on par a little bit better. Right now, if you're holding the ETF, you're actually losing a little bit each day.
It goes back to, I think we do these news topics, and for people who are kind of close to this space, understand what we're talking about, it's pretty easy to follow. I still say that 70% of our client base here has no idea what we just said for the last 20 minutes.
Yep.
Right. So we probably should do another podcast on uses of ETFs. But it's becoming more and more mainstream.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you've been, yes, the Bitcoin at 20 cents and all those stories.
Yeah.
That's gone. But I don't think that you've missed the boat when it comes to digital assets.
Yeah. This is, again, a gigantic wave, and we're just starting to see the tide come up a little bit from that wave, right?
Yeah.
But I used this analogy the other day, because if you think about the internet, if you go buy something on somebody's website, you don't talk to your friends about the thing you bought and how you did the transaction. Like
Right.
you don't say, "Oh, my transaction went through like a Microsoft data
yeah.
center or an Amazon data center." Like you just don't leave. Like
Right.
the internet just works.
Right.
I think that once crypto starts to, in my opinion, start to fulfill its destiny of sorts here, it will be in the plumbing of the financial system, and you'll just be transacting in maybe a more efficient way, a low cost way.
Yeah.
But as a consumer, I don't think you're going to be touching this and realizing you're touching it all in the same time. I think it may be an afterthought.
I mean, this is not the best example, but it did come to mind this last Christmas. I've noticed that I really valued the people who were selling that you could use Apple Pay, because when I went to buy something, I didn't have to enter my address
Right.
or anything. I just did Apple Pay. I double clicked on my phone,
Yep.
and it knew address. We knew where to ship it.
Mhm.
It knew which credit card to charge. Everything.
Absolutely.
And that's the future. That's the future of transactions. But I think that's just the beginning of what, because you do crypto to that, you add blockchain to that.
Yep.
Think of all the purchases that can be done so much more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, the blockchain will end up in the background, helping with efficiencies in businesses, and that whether consumers fully get to realize that savings or not, we'll I guess see over time. But I think businesses will uptake it for that reason. But yeah, I mean, once we have better regulations around banking with crypto, which we're probably headed down that path, you could totally have a stable coin or maybe even a crypto within your Apple wallet to be able to pay for something and not really have to think about it.
And the
right
transaction
now you have to
cost
think about
will be
it.
way down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Visa and MasterCard and all the traditional credit card issuers have got to be really, I know MasterCard in particular is really working on crypto, but and I'm sure Visa is, if not, they're crazy. Talk about fee compression in their business, approaching zero would be a big worry for them. So.
All right. Well, thanks, Robert. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about Teton Crypto Capital, you can reach out to Robert at
TetonCryptoCapital.com.
And it's also linked in our show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys again next week.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.